Hello and welcome to the Driver of the Weekend video for the Portuguese Grand Prix, the video in which I compile all of the data that we have looked at across all of the practice sessions, all of the qualifying sessions, and every single lap of the Grand Prix. Shove it all together into one big algorithm that comprises of 27 main categories. I was about to say 30. 13 of which look at battles against your teammate and performances against your teammate across each of the 3 racing days, and then 14 of which look at your own independent performances isolated completely from your teammate as well. And don't worry, this algorithm will get better as the season progresses. The more data points that I get and the more races that happen, the more accurate this gets, as there's just that little bit more data to go off of. And then towards the end of this video, we'll be comparing it to my ranks that I created post-race on Sunday, and then to your audience's average ranks as well. So on that video that I made on Sunday post-race, I asked you guys to give each driver a rank 1 through to 20, 20 being the best, and 1 being the worst. I've then averaged out all of those responses and created an average audience scores. We will then be looking at all 3 of them for the Portuguese Grand Prix, and then also seeing who has performed the best this season so far. So with all of that out of the way, let us jump on into the driver of the weekend, and we begin very quickly with the practice driver of the day. This one is a little bit on the ambiguous side and it only accounts for 5% of the total of the driver of the weekend. So it's not particularly relevant to look at all of this, but it is interesting to see who comes out on top, in this case Mick Schumacher, and who comes out at the bottom, Nicholas Latifi. But we quickly turn our attention to the qualifying driver of the day, and Esteban Ocon was given a 17.3 out of 20 score for his qualifying performance, and then all the way at the bottom, Daniel Ricciardo was given the least score possible, 1 out of 20. Now unfortunately for Daniel Ricciardo, this 1 out of 20 mainly comes from the fact he was knocked out in Q1, and the gap between him and Lando Norris was one of the largest on the field so far. There was then no data to look at for Q2 or Q3, and then also his position in Q1 was vastly down on his average position so far in Q1, so the 2 categories that he could have really scored in, he didn't score very well in, which is why he is ranked so low. And then from the driver of qualifying, we look at the driver of the race, and Max Verstappen was actually given this title just ahead of Lewis Hamilton, and Mick Schumacher was put in P3 ahead of Gasly, Leclerc, Norris, Giovinazzi, Russell, then the 2 Alpines scoring 10.5 and 10.2 respectively, Vettel, Mazepin above Bottas, then Perez, who was equal to Bottas as well, Stroll, Latifi, Tsunoda, Ricciardo not rated highly during the Grand Prix, Raikkonen and Carlos Sainz at the back. Now, this algorithm, it does not take into account bold overtakes or incredible strategies and things like that, as all of those types of categories introduce a lot of bias. The way that you rank drivers of the day includes so much bias. This looks purely at the data, purely at the numbers, the pace against your teammate, your position average, your standard deviation across the race, your positional gains, how many you've made from the start to the end. There are so many factors that go into this decision, and none of it includes things like exceptional overtakes, boldness of strategy, or superb drives through the field, as all of those types of categories are far too subjective, and even if I was to try and implement them in some sort of fair way, it would be introducing my biases, which I don't want whatsoever. And if you would like a full explanation of this algorithm and the maths behind it, I do have a 3-part series which I'll link in a card in the corner. But then, compiling 5% of the practice ranks, 30% of the qualifying ranks, and 65% of the race ranks, we come up with an overall driver of the weekend. The race obviously has got to have the biggest weighting, as that is the most impactful thing of the race weekend. Qualifying is also fairly significant, and then practice, I could probably lower this to about a 2%, but I feel it does need to play some sort of role. And mushing all of these values together for the Portuguese Grand Prix, we have a driver of the weekend of Lewis Hamilton, a 14.4. Important to note that this is actually the lowest score for the driver of the weekend so far in the 3 Grand Prix this season. Max Verstappen is just 0.1 of a point behind him, with Mick Schumacher rated 3rd driver of the weekend. Lando Norris up there highly as well, joint with Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon doing well, joint with Antonio Giovinazzi, then Leclerc, Russell, Bottas, Vettel, Perez, Alonso, Mazepin, Stroll, Sainz, Tsunoda, Latifi, Raikkonen, and poor Daniel Ricciardo, after his miserable qualifying performance, is down at the back. And so that is what my algorithm has declared for the driver of the weekend for the Portuguese Grand Prix. Now we're going to compare that rank to my ranks that I created on Sunday post-race, and then to your audience ranks as well that I've just finished averaging out. So on screen now is the order of the data-derived ranks, with Hamilton P1 and then Ricciardo down in P20. And then in the middle here is my opinion ranks. I also put Hamilton as P1, scoring 18 out of 20, but I put Nikita Mazepin at the bottom, scoring 4 out of 20. Interestingly, the top two are the same for both my data-derived ranks and my opinion ranks as well. Norris also pops up within the top 5 for both of them, but Leclerc, I've put Leclerc in P4, whereas the algorithm has only put in P8. And then comparing this to the average audience ranks, you guys have put Lewis Hamilton as the driver of the weekend, scoring an 18.4, 2 points clear of Max Verstappen and Lando Norris in P3. You've got the same top 3 as I do, and the same top 2 as the data-derived ranks. We've also both put Nikita Mazepin at the bottom, but you were a touch more on the harsh side, giving him a 3.1 to my 4. So overall, my opinion ranks and your audience ranks are fairly consistent. There are a couple of significant changes here or there, but there are absolutely no real similarities apart from the top 2 between the data-derived ranks and either my opinion ranks or the audience ranks at all. Now all I'm going to do is just add on the Portuguese ranks to the Bahrain ranks and then also the Imola ranks, and we'll come up with a season progressive total as we go through all of the races. So looking at the data-derived ranks across the whole season, Max Verstappen scores a 45.3 so far. This is out of a total of 60. Mick Schumacher is declared P2 so far for driver of the season, closely followed by Lando Norris and also Lewis Hamilton, with George Russell being the only other driver to score above 40. Then comes Leclerc, Stroll, Ocon, Gasly, Giovinazzi, Raikkonen, Bottas and Sainz as the only drivers to score above 30, with Alonso, Vettel, Tsunoda, Perez, Ricciardo, Mazepin and Latifi all struggling so far this season. And comparing this to my opinion ranks across the season so far, Verstappen is P1, exactly the same as the data-derived ranks, but Hamilton is P2, Norris P3, then comes Leclerc, Ricciardo, much higher up my order than the data-derived order, then Carlos Sainz, Gasly, Russell, Alonso, Ocon, Bottas, Perez, Schumacher, Tsunoda, Raikkonen, Giovinazzi, Latifi, Stroll, Vettel, and then Mazepin at the bottom. And then comparing these two sets of ranks to the average audience ranks across the whole season so far, you've actually put Hamilton as the best driver of the season for these first 3 rounds. 2 points clear from Max Verstappen, and then Lando Norris is P3. That is consistent across all 3 of these categories: the data-derived ranks, my opinions, and also the audience as well. And there we go, there is the driver of the weekend categories all broken down for the Portuguese Grand Prix, with the comparison to my ranks and your audience ranks as well. Please let me know what you think of all of this down in the comments below. If you agree with what my algorithm has spat out for this weekend, it has caused quite a few arguments down in the comments below, but that's exactly what this is for. I do like talking about it, and also if you do feel like you want some explanation as to how exactly this algorithm works and what exactly the 27 categories are, please go check out that small little series where I do discuss and I do justify each of the 27 chosen categories. But that is all I've got for you today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next episode with whatever and whenever I decide to make it. I'll see you guys then.